Yeah. So thanks for coming after lunch with the full stomach and to talk about P2P University. One of the reasons why we've merged the sessions is that different people from this group were actually involved in the paper and in the project, and we wrote the paper because we wanted to think about the idea of accreditation a little more because we were dealing with that in the project. So the two are really related, one more or less. And so the presentation will be a quick update on P2P University, what's been happening, and we're also launching the sign-up today, so it's an exciting day for us. We'll talk a little bit about where we came from and what is P2P University, what are the first courses that we're launching, and then at the end of that, we want to talk about accreditation as one of the key things that we have been thinking about a lot. What's the role of accreditation in P2P University? And Chris is going to lead through that part of the presentation, and then we'll have quite a large chunk at the end that hopefully we can discuss as much as possible with all of you, because we'd love to get your ideas on what are these new forms of accreditation that could work in the OER space. And we haven't really divided the slides in any highly structured way, so I think we could just kind of, everyone talks whenever they feel that it's something that's close to their heart. Maybe, Stian, do you want to just go ahead and start with the first slide, and then we see what comes up?
We live our beliefs. We are peer-to-peer. Truly.
Yeah, I think we can go to the next one.
So it's really special for us to be here because 1 year ago in Utah was pretty much where this idea, it wasn't where there was some kind of a catalyst function there. It actually goes back, I mean, for my personal history, it goes back to iCommons and Delia, who's not here today, and we started talking about what would the University of the future look like, what kind of historical constraints can we shed, and what kind of things that exist are really good, and how could that look like, and we kind of kept that dialogue going, adding some members and discussing it, virtually and at conferences, and through a kind of a series of fortunate events, at not the least, like the Chronicle suddenly running a big piece about this thing that we're going to do, so kind of forcing us to do it. We pretty much came together a year ago, and we did a session where we got a lot of support and we got a lot of really good feedback from the people there. And we said, yes, you know what, we could keep writing papers for 3 more years, and we could keep thinking about how this would look, but we should just do it as an experiment, and we will learn more from that experiment than by just talking about it. So we decided to do it, and we are here today to actually invite you to come along when we are launching the university. That's why we have cool t-shirts.
It's real,
So,
it's t-shirts.
So can we go back to the
one
there?
Yeah. Really cover that.
So do you want to say that, Joel?
Okay. Yeah. So the basic concepts, again, we'll start with the values. One of the basic values is openness. And this should seem obvious. However, when we start venturing out into the world, it's not obvious because most of the world is not open. And so we carry this with us, not so much as a flag to wave in people's face, but as a reminder to us and to the people who are participating in the process of who we are. The idea behind Peer-to-Peer University is that not only is the curriculum open, and so it's not just open materials, like I'm also the executive director of Connexions, which, as many of you know, is an open access, open source project, which we'll talk about later on in other sessions. But also the contributions of the people participating in the process are also open. And so it's very much in that it's a totally open sphere and not necessarily regulated to just the materials that are used that are open and the rest of it's not. Everything in the process is open, and that includes commentary from the professor to the student, because everybody learns from that interaction. And so in a normal classroom setting, when I was a professor, people would come to me and it was a private conversation that was not shared with anybody else. And so now we've taken that one step into the open sphere as well.
Well, the way to give a brief idea about how we conceptualize this fitting into the kind of the open landscape is that we have all these resources, and just the previous session they were talking a lot about resourcing. Yesterday I'm sure they talked a lot about resources, and that's wonderful. And what we're trying to do is not to create a whole new series of resources. I mean, we might generate some, or we might improve some, but our idea is to kind of be a superstructure and to say we have these wonderful resources, but we need these processes, these communities, these platform where learning can happen. And we're starting with a very specific pedagogical model, but it's which is one idea that we would like to test out, which we will tell you about exactly how we're going to do the pilot and go forwards. But we hope to build a strong community that will let us experiment with a number of ways of doing this kind of learning, teaching, co-learning, and so on.
Maybe if we ever progress past the first slide, then we will talk about these things. I think let's just run through it a little faster.
Philipp is our timekeeper.
Well, only because we really want to get to the accreditation.
Yeah.
So we've received a little bit of support from ULIT and ULIT Foundation and Shuttleworth Foundation to set up this pilot. We're using the money to organize a workshop for all the volunteers that have been part of the project after we run the pilot, so that we can reflect on what's happened. And we've been very lucky that University of California, Irvine, who unfortunately Gary and Larry are not here today, they have offered to incubate the project, because we had a lot of concerns around legal issues and how are we going to channel the money and who's responsible, what if we get sued, oh my god. And they said, well, it's actually none of these are too serious. We'll provide the backing for you guys, and you can try this out in a safe environment. And then when you're ready to be your own nonprofit organization, you can go off into the world. So, you want to talk about the pilot phase? Neeru?
Yeah. So I mean, I guess the way we're starting this is to run a set of courses. And so we have a small set of courses from neuroethics, creative nonfiction writing, cyberpunk literature, poker, and strategic thinking. Behavioral economics, that's my class. And basically just a bunch of volunteers have signed up to organize these classes. So I guess we're people organizing these classes, we're calling the course organizer, not a teacher or leader or anything else, but just someone who organizes a class. And people who organize the classes probably come from a variety of different backgrounds. So some people are just people who are curious about the topic and are willing to go out and sort of collect materials and structure a process where people can learn the materials together. To people like, well, for example, in my course, I'm a doctoral student and I study behavioral economics, and so it actually might be more like I'm actually sort of teaching the class. So sign-ups begin now, and the deadline is 2 weeks.
26th of
Yes, 26th of August.
26th of August. So you can sign up for these classes. They go for 6 weeks, and they have weekly assignments. In some cases, they have weekly meetings, depending on where people are. Depending on who the organizer is and where people are, those meetings can be on chat or some kind of voice communication. There are assignments every week, and people will be posting their assignments to blogs. There's a lot of, they're all structured with a lot of interaction, so that, you know, you'll do an assignment and other people in the class will comment on your assignment, and then there'll be like a lot of back and forth on that. And so,
just to pick up on the sign-ups, so we have kind of a two-tier model, because we actually have limited enrollment. So this is probably a quite new idea, and part of the idea is that we want a really tight-knit community that has really, because this isn't a teacher and 2,000 people can look to the webcast and absorb stuff. This is 15 people intensely engaging with each other over 6 weeks. If you're not putting something in, you're not getting something out. And so we want to try to limit that, and that's an arbitrary number. We'll see how that works. And so you have to kind of apply, although it's free, of course. And that's also because we wanted a little bit of a barrier, because maybe then it's like an incentive, like, wow, I got in, I'm excited about this, I want to do this course. However, as we mentioned before, all the material we produce, all the interactions, everything is free. So anyone who wants to, you know, kind of drive by can come by, look at everything, they can blog about it. I mean, there could be a wider ecosystem outside of the tight-knit group. So as I said, once again, that's the model that we're trying for the pilot, and we might change that in the future.
just just an aside just for my course, so I actually do a lot of stuff in open access, but one of the things I'm going to have students do is actually send them articles, like closed access articles, academic articles, and have them summarize them, and then make those summaries public for people. So it's sort of a way of, I actually have another project called Accreditation, which is doing this kind of stuff, but to generate more open materials from closed access materials. So that could be a byproduct of this process.
Maybe, yeah.
I just have a question because I'm on your website and I'm going through all of
Right
it
now?
Yes,
Oh my
of course,
God.
right now.
It's still up.
Yes, I'm trying to figure out whether I have time to fit in Neeru's class, actually. So, the eventual goal will be to award university credit, is that what, or is it, for example, right now, to me, it reminds me of, well, you were talking about at Harvard, for example, they have a community ed program, and Stanford, near where I do, has community ed courses where anybody who's intellectually curious, basically, can sign up for a course. Of course, there you pay a fee, and that's how they support it. So is this generally the idea to be community ed free courses, or is the eventual like down the line, which you talked about, the down the line was getting this year ready, is the eventual down the line to then award credits that might be transferred to a university? Or you don't know?
Can we postpone that question
Of
until
course.
Chris's section? Because that's all going to be about accreditation, and it's kind of
Very good
the
question.
core. Yeah.
Oh,
the
I'm
matter.
sorry.
So, no, it's perfect.
I was so
question.
excited on your
Yeah,
website that
That's
I.
awesome.
You're just ahead.
Maybe just two things about technology. We're using a hosted peanut butter wiki, which is not the perfect solution for us. It's a closed source system. It's hosted by a company. We don't have access to the source code. And we're only doing that for the pilot. So we have a very strong commitment to open source. In parallel, we are thinking about what's the perfect option for our website that we want to run this on after the pilot.
Wiki Educator.
Wiki Educator is in that list.
They have really good terms.
Free.
Better than free.
But there's definitely this. I'm sure people have that question when they come to the site. Why is this not an open source site? So we are going to be an open source site in the next iteration after the pilot. Okay, so next things after the pilot, we're going to run the pilot for 6 weeks. Then we're working on this technology, as I mentioned. We're going to have a reflection workshop where we invite all the people that have been involved in volunteering and making the pilot happen. So no one's been paid to do any of this. And we'll bring them together in an interesting place, and we'll spend a few days to think about how did the pilot go, what can we do better in the future, and really draw out all of the learnings from that. And then do more and better afterwards. And one of the other issues we're really thinking about is governance and community. And I don't actually know how many slides we have left.
Oh, it's pretty.
This one and then the last one, right? Yeah, so do you want to talk about this one and then we
Well, so basically, this morning, I think, or last night, we pulled the plug in the way that the wiki was closed, and while we were developing it, right now it's open for everyone, and you run it. It's P2P.org, and we have information about the 6 courses that are open for enrollment, and you can sign up for them. You can read about how the project works, and so we have 2 weeks now to get people to sign up, and obviously that would really help our pilot if people did want to participate. And plus, we would like lots of people to know about this and give feedback and so on. So we really need your help for that. You know, we'd love for you to right now be on Twitter and say there's something crazy happening in room 150. You can tweet, you can follow at P2PU, you can use the hashtag. You can put, there's a little badge there which we have on our website that you can put on your blog if you feel like it, and link to us. You can join our mailing list, and we're trying to create a little bit of a buzz, and we've got cool t-shirts, which always helps.
Oh yeah, we have t-shirts for more people.
Yes.
So if you would like to get a t-shirt and wear it during the conference so I can take a picture,
Mm-hmm.
then that's the deal. You wear the t-shirt, we get a picture.
Yeah.
I think that's it for us. Hey? We've just got, it's all the names.
There's
of
the
people.
URL. It's live now.
So and there are actually 2 people who are sitting here whose names are on that list as well. John and Jane. Cynthia.
So what plans do you have from the pilot phase to capture what you're learning and sharing that back, for example, about community building and the wonderful things you discovered from the project?
What plans or what?
Or what yes, what plans or have you built in a mechanism for that? And just,
I thought you started.
Well, yeah, I think that's really important because we're really going into this to see what we can learn. I suggested we make that a question, but we didn't really have time for that in this session. But I'd love to discuss this with anyone here later. In what ways can we design the pilot? I mean, we obviously have a lot of the parameters set already, but in what ways can we design the pilot to learn as much as possible from it? And another thing is, if there are people here who are interested in doing research on this topic, we would love to work with you, and we would give you access, and we would discuss how to do that. So it's really, it's not a blueprint. It's really like research, design research, or what you want to call it. So we'll try to document as much as possible. We're collecting some data from the people who are signing up. We're going to have surveys when they exit, and we're going to try to encourage them to write as much as possible. We'll have interviews with the teachers, and we'll try to blog and make that as open as possible. But I'd love more ideas on that.
I understand you might have some expertise in that area, so we'll be calling you later.
Quick, over the t-shirts that you did.
Yeah.
No, she's already on my list of t-shirts.
So are there any other quick questions about, so we're going to be here for the whole conference, most of us, and we'd be very happy to talk to you at any time. If there are any quick questions about this, otherwise we'll move on to the next topic.
Which is kind of just an extension.
Yeah, but,
Sort of extension.
Yeah, let's go. Let's do that.
okay.
Well, I'm Chris from Michigan State University, and I'm on the advisory group to peer-to-peer. I'm also on the advisory group, I guess it's called, or the Council for Wiki Educator, or train, those other wiki educators do. I find this experiment so compelling because there are other websites, as you guys know, like where you can find a tutor. There are a couple of different websites that I don't recall their names, but somebody can shout them out. Where if you're a teacher and you want to teach something, you can just go and set up your class. It's like a open learning management platform. There are services kind of starting to come out of the open ecosystem that some of them have been running for a long time and some are relatively new, to kind of take advantage of these conversations, these discussion groups, these quote universities that are emerging. Some of them have official business plans that are actually growing, like People's University. They had the first sign-ups and hope to make money off of minor fees for registrations. Others are, different types of initiatives, like my friend Teresa from Oregon State's working on an open campus idea. So things are coming from different sectors, and this is a really compelling experiment because it's a work in progress. It's kind of like Tom Peters' expeditionary things. You just do it and you learn in the doing. So I think your question about, well, how do you make sure you're learning from it is really critically important. But your question, to get back to your very first question, comes up every single time. Well, oh my God, well, if it's a course, that sort of implies credit. And if you
Because
use the
one
word
of them
university,
says it. One of them says this is a 3-unit graduate course. That's why I was part of the confusion.
Right. So one of the things that Philipp and I and other people started working on through the Open Courseware Consortium originally, and then other conversations at the Utah conference were, okay, well, what are the existing options for getting transfer credit or academic credit? So I have just a few slides that summarizes things that peer-to-peer university can do right now as options for giving people and helping them obtain academic credit. So the first kind of idea that I want to plant in your mind is, so what is it that you're trying to do with credit? Really what you're talking about when you boil it down is you're trying to provide somebody with meaningful recognition for something they're doing in the class, right? And that meaningful is kind of the key word because that's a subjective, credit isn't necessarily meaningful, right? So it's meaningful when you can do something with it, and most people who are students right now are trying to get a job, right? Some people do it for other reasons, like they're trying to get some experience to get into a university, or they need credit for a degree program that they're trying to finish. A lot of people take courses and even get degrees not because of the learning as much as their primary goal is really build a professional network. And that's why people go to Harvard and pay all that premium price for going to Harvard is they graduate with a network. Things that build your resume. Things that help you reach a personal goal might have nothing to do with anybody else thinks. Has nothing to do with that external at all. It's all just something that you want to know more about. So these are some of the motivations that drive people to attend some sort of formal or informal learning experience. So the meaningfulness ranges depending on the person's goal. And then in order to be meaningful to somebody else besides the intrinsic value, it needs to be put in the experience needs to be symbolized in some sort of form that is recognized by other people. So these are some of the traditional ones: academic credit, transfer credit, which is different, right? There's a service that can give you credit that can be recognized by multiple institutions, as opposed to going to one institution who looks at all your stuff and says, oh, we'll give you 20 transfer credits, but you can't take those anywhere else. It's just if you want to, transfer into our institution. So there's a difference there. A lot of people in the professional world are motivated by recognition in the form of a certificate of completion or a certificate of achievement, which frankly anybody can print off on their laser printer, like David Wiley did for his class last year, and printed off a certificate of completion from him. Versus, something more official like a certification, is different. It usually has some sort of government oversight in it, or at least a professional association oversight. There's more, layers of quality control there. Continuing education units or continuing medical education units, depending on your profession, associations will require you to have so many hours of continuing education units to keep your qualification up. So that's another meaningful form. And then these last two is where I think we can really have some interesting progress made through initiatives like P2P, peer-to-peer university. We really should give that name a little more thought, P2P, but reputation and performance, all right? So one of the things that you can get that's meaningful are things that would build your reputation among a community of practice or a network that you're being part of. And a lot of that is based on how you're performing in the community. So if it's the software community, for example, how well your code is recognized and used, and how many people use it and tweak it and reuse it. Or if you're in some other type of professional group, your contributions to that community, whether they're digital or not, are ways that you build up your reputation, and they're all built on things you actually do, not your grades on a test, not the paper you wrote necessarily, unless it's creative writing or literary type of community. So things that show and demonstrate your level of expertise and knowledge. All right, so here's the traditional, this is the little summary. Pathways to academic forms of recognition. Some of these the individual can do themselves, like in the first one. People who took David Wiley's class, for example, if they were at an institution already, and anybody can do this if you're currently a student, you go talk to your advisor or your teacher, and you say, I want to take this class over here at this other institution, would you let me count it for a seminar credit or extra credit or something that fits into the program? And usually the answer is yes, and they might ask you to do a little extra work, like write a paper, but the student's in control of that if they're already enrolled in an institution. That's very doable. But also there are tests you can take. You can take something from the College Board, an advanced placement test if you're learning on your own how to do like Psych 101 and you want to get credit for that. There's places you can go and you can get an assessment, and you pass the assessment, you pay whatever the assessment fee is, and you get credit. There are more and more ways to get that type of credit. If you go to places like Excelsior College is a source for that. If you, depending on how you want to enroll, Western Governors University is a source for that. Kaplan is a source for that. There's private and nonprofit and for-profit avenues to help you convert your experience into credit. So credit for prior learning is another piece of it. So if you're doing something that is adding to your portfolio that hopefully you're all keeping, because they don't look at your resume anymore unless you always have a portfolio. So if you're putting all these things in your portfolio, there are more and more places that can help you turn that into credit, either transfer credit into their one and only institution, or in something that's more transferable among a certain set of institutions. Certificates of completion and achievement, like I said, anybody can do that, right? And its meaningfulness depends on who printed it for you, okay? And how well it's recognized by whoever you're trying to impress with it. And then continuing education units is actually a pretty straightforward, you can't get this as an individual learner, but if the place offering the course made an arrangement with a group that's a registered provider of continuing education units or what have you, there's several flavors, it's just a seat time thing. You can say this thing is worth 20 hours of seat time, they convert that into credits, they keep the records of the central place. You can get that through most continuing education arms and even some standalone associations in certain professions. So these are all very doable things. Your peer-to-peer university, depending on the course. So Neeru, your course, there may be a professional association that would count it through prior arrangements as continuing education units. Something to think about. Okay, then the last two, reputation. This is really about your personal brand. Like how many of you have Googled yourself or have read those personal branding books, right? Of all the things you can do with with your blog and your Twitter and everything else. So this is another thing that we can take advantage of. Community ratings, awards that you can get, your performance. I talked about your portfolio, quality ratings, Connexions has lenses in it, all right? Where a community, a professional group, or even just a club or us, we can set up a peer-to-peer university lens, and we can figure out our own little ranking system and rating for courses that we think are really great or have been used and road tested in peer-to-peer university things. There's ways that that type of feedback can add to your personal reputation and be indicators of your performance. So there's a lot more on this. If you're interested, online at these two sources, one is the link at the bottom is the paper that Philipp and I did in Dalian last year, which kind of summarizes the current ways to get traditional credit. And then the other one is coming out in a special issue of, I forgot what that stands for.
International Review and Research on Open and Distance Learning.
Thank you. So we got a paper accepted there that talks about this in a lot more depth, and we'll be actually strengthening that before it's published, focusing on the reputation and performance angles. All right, so now the fun begins, all right? So you can't just be here listening to us. We want your ideas. So here you have a totally open university. It doesn't cost anything. People are motivated by, at least on feedback of how people want to do it and how they want to engage. And an idea that we've been kind of kicking around is in terms of helping people get recognition beyond the traditional credit. What could we do to design the peer-to-peer university experience so that there are more structured ways to help people build their reputation and demonstrate their performance? And if you're online now, and if you go to this website, if you just type in McKinsey and the winner is the name of the report, you'll see a blueprint basically on the X Prize Foundation website. This came out in March. That's a blueprint for how to organize a prize or an award, whatever you want to call it, that achieves one or more of these 7 things. All right, so we're all familiar with the prize because you're the best at something, the blue ribbon model. There's different reasons that you could do something. One is identify excellence. One is to raise awareness among the public if you have a good PR campaign that goes along with the prize. You can focus communities on specific problems that you need solved, like the Netflix prize, if you're aware of that. You can mobilize new talent that don't come from traditional means. So a lot of companies are using prizes to fund innovation, R&D that they can't do inside, that they need to commission people that they don't even know are out there that can help them solve their problem. You can design a process in a prize where people have to kind of go through certain hurdles. Well, sort of sounds like maybe that's a course, there's certain requirements that they have to go through and certain deliverables that they have to provide. And it's a way to mobilize capital. Interestingly enough, when you read this report, education's not even listed here. This is about philanthropic prizes, right? This is how places like Hewlett and others and corporations can fund innovation prizes, and there's not one mention of how you could use it as an education. In fact, they don't even assume that like universities would be a funder of a prize, so I'm kind of missing an opportunity there if you ask me. So I think we could use it. And according to their research, all 7 of those outcomes are achievable and have the power to change skills, behavior, and outcomes and have a significant societal benefit. That sort of sounds like the mission statement of my own university, Michigan State University. I mean, this is the type of thing we do as an education group, an education organization. So I think there's a lot of potential here, and I would really like to hear your thoughts and ideas and reflections on how you think we could use this kind of model in peer-to-peer university. Because, I would imagine, for example, Neeru, we created some sort of prize in partnership with a couple of well-known associations or research groups or corporations even that would build a reputation of somebody who maybe did a project in your course. Maybe the best project got an award or prize of some type, maybe the top 3, or maybe you solved a problem with your course, which is popular for a capstone model for a course, for example. How highly recognized can we get that to become? And wouldn't there be a university that wouldn't just want to snap up the top 2 winners of your course because, man, they really did an outstanding, had an outstanding solution, outstanding innovation. And that people are going to want to grab those people if they wanted to. So that's the kind of thing I think we have the potential to do here. Ideas? Thoughts? Is it really stupid, or what do you think? And I think that is the last slide, yes. Okay.
Yeah, I think one the building a portfolio for the student is a really important facet of this. And I think you can design a course in a way to facilitate that. So if you have a persistent record of sort of what the students learned in the course available from your institution, like here's our course, here's the syllabus, it has, you know, all these things, and this is what people learned in fall of '09 in our course. And so if a student puts that on their resume or something, they have, here's the paper I wrote for the course, and here's the link to what this course was all about, in case you don't recognize this as a trusted authority already.
That's a really, kind of having a persistent record.
Yeah, we've absolutely thought
You
about
guys
that.
talk about that?
Absolutely, yeah, it's a great idea.
Randy?
I'm kind of wary of prizes, because I think about all the people that didn't win the prize. Like, I've never won a prize,
Doesn't sound very
but I'm
open, does
important. But what I'm thinking is you have your prize, but then you build an event or a conference around that, so that everybody else can come and become part of that process. And so, bringing up my word from another session, is you start to build a different type of culture, where the culture is everyone wins, not somebody loses. So, and that will be a transformative, I mean, I can see by your body language, it can become a transformative experience, because so often we are told to be cooperative, but we're really evaluated in a competitive system. And this sort of flips it and gives people a completely different experience that they can share and learn and grow. And anyways, you get the idea. So it's just an idea.
I think with the value of openness, I think that's a really important way, I think, value to design into something that we could call it a prize, or we could call it something else, but I think thinking about how you can be inclusionary and open and democratic is really important.
I mean, I think you could also be framing their mindset as they're coming in and out, because you can always, if you have the portfolios of everybody, they can always be like, look at my portfolio, it was 10 times better than everybody else's on the course. And like, that's kind of thinking that you have to be continuing throughout the course, making sure that that doesn't happen. So creating spaces that are, everybody works together on that space, and you can be like, we did this, look at what we did when I was part of this community. Might be a way to make that prize more tangible as a portfolio.
Yeah, or as a group.
They're all great ideas.
Yeah.
Just following from this, it's important, I think, to have a tool that captures, if you like, the turmoil of collaboration and represents this collaboration, but people are able to trace their contributions, and if there is a learning design also embedded into it. Maybe we talked this morning about putting too much context can spoil things, but I think there is a need of structure, and as long as it's socially networked somehow. I'm from the Open University UK, and we have been developing some tools that aim to capture this turmoil of collaboration and interaction, and enable people to be reflexive of their learning and the learning processes. And we can talk about
Open
later.
source tool?
Yes.
It's great.
It's CloudWorks, one of them.
Okay.
Hi, I'm interested in the conversation between the student who goes to the professor and says, I want to learn, I want the advantage of open resources and construct an independent study. Could you talk a little bit more about that? Are there scripts online? Are there resources for students that want to do that?
The question is, how is the student, can you say that again?
Like, how do we sneak in these resources into existing structures by allowing students to come in and work it out on a one-to-one basis?
Big
Did
question.
David Wiley leave yet? He was just in the back.
Yeah,
Yeah, 'cause
he would have had a good answer.
he did exactly that in his course, where the students would negotiate that with their professors, and he would provide the backup. But that's one of the things we encourage people who sign up for these courses. We're going to find out who is actually enrolled in university and has the potential to get credit in their institution, and then what could we do to help them have that conversation if there is something we can do. Maybe their professor will say, this has nothing to do with the university, I'm not interested. But I suspect there will be some people who, they'll look at the advisory board, they'll look at the people involved in that course, the references, and they'll say, this is actually not, terrible, and let's try it out.
Yeah.
And so, if you could ask the question again in 8 weeks from now, we will give you a much better answer.
But I think part of what we're trying to do with our university is twofold. I mean, one thing is that we want to experiment ourselves with those things that the institution kind of has to do, whether that's building the framework for keeping permanent portfolios and designing our courses so that people produce outcomes that can be shown, or like they're writing abstracts for AccWikis. That's something you can link to, right? So that's one thing that we can do. Another thing is that we can build a community of students that help each other and say, well, I went to my professor and I said this and that worked, and I went to Kaplan's and they said that their economics course was kind of similar to, and so building that knowledge base, I think, is just as important. So having those two, like the thing that we do and the thing that the community does, I think working together.
I think one variable might be the actual courses themselves. But again, not everyone probably can't have a cookie cutter approach to every course. So, for instance, one option might be students understand that part of their coursework needs to post the work within the group, and then to offer feedback, critique. So they actually get that kind of learning reflection as well.
There's another question right over here.
I actually didn't hear what you said, so I'm hoping I'm not saying the same thing, but I was just wondering, for the students who have taken the courses, will there be two things? I mean, will there be an online community where they can continue to engage with the new students and not the professors, the organizers, course organizers? And to what extent can they also have an impact on how everything is working out, and also be able, in terms of being able to sort of do the lessons learned and things like that, they would certainly be instrumental in that.
It's a great question. And one of the things that we'd like, but this is something we're still exploring, is having the courses kind of grow so that you kind of start with this framework and then you add lots of resources that you find, and then the next year we'll have access. I mean, we have to design so that it's like not, oh, everything's done, I can't even do anything, but so that we actually build up. And of course that's also building up this resource base, so people who doesn't even want to be part of that learning group can still go there like, oh my god, there's so much awesome material that's created that I can use in other contexts. But I think that the idea of how it lives on, but how does the student live on? How do the people say, well, we want to keep learning, 6 weeks is not enough, and how do we keep that going? I think that's something we have to think about.
One thing would be great is if people who take a course then become course organizers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if you can get that kind of chain going, then it just keeps moving. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
I think the meaning, if there's funding to be figured out to continue what you're going to be doing with your first round of funding, bringing people together, to on a regular basis, right? Because groups tend to have physical things, whether it's a conference like this or something like that, be a big difference. On our campus, we have a program for what's called the Bailey Scholars Program. A lot of campuses have something like this, and we structure ours as a minor as opposed to a whole degree program. And right now, it's completely face-to-face, and everybody's a co-learner, whether you're a faculty member or a student or a researcher. Everybody comes up with their own learning agenda, and they make it fit the course structure so they get credit and they get a minor, but it's not about the courses, that's a convenience. And the group is very self-directed of what they do, how they do it, and they do it together. And they're looking now at kind of the ideas that are being explored here at P2P University. How can they move that online? But the structure, the social structure of how they engage over time with alums of the program, what people do over time as mentors and fellows, how they structure that. People tend to do it on their own, but we can provide Bailey Scholars Program can provide structures that kind of foster that and provide a message for it. So those ideas would be interesting to see how they pan out peer-to-peer.
Okay.
Oh, you want to go first? Okay. Go
For
ahead.
moderation purposes, my sole task for existing here, other than listening to a great presentation, we've got about another minute before our break starts.
Can we give this question first? Because he hasn't asked the question yet.
Okay, I'll be really quick. So I've been getting really addicted to this game called Foursquare, and he uses a schema of a municipality. So if I check in Vancouver more than anyone else, then I become the mayor of Vancouver, and I think that's really interesting. So as long as you don't have real professors and a real dean and so forth, it might be interesting to appropriate the schema of academia. And as far as providing accreditation and reputation and so forth, that might be something to explore.
Thanks.
Dean for a day.
Maybe one.
Anyway, my comment is that I think this sort of open course lends itself to a way of building up content in a way that, as you go through the course, the students build up what they've learned into some collected space. And then if you want to recreate that course, you can rip that apart and then rebuild it again for the next one and make it even better. And so it ends up as where the textbook isn't where you start from with the course. The textbook's what you end up with.
Yeah. So maybe just one last sentence to close from our side.
Sure.
This is an open invitation to all of you. Last year we were half at the size up here. This year we're already grown. So hopefully soon there'll be more people sitting on this side of the room than on the other side. So we hope that you all will become part of this community in some way or other. And we really appreciate all your insight and feedback. And please keep it coming. Contact information is on the website. Even if there are some things you feel we're doing wrong and you didn't want to say it here, please send those thoughts to us. And thank you all for coming to the session.
Thank you.
If someone wants to, I carried them all the way from Cape Town. I'm not taking them back.